Okay, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. I'm going to give a full eclipse report since nobody else seemed to have. We have UFOs, unknown lights, occulted stars, unocculted stars, and we're going to start with asking, did we in fact go to totality? So let's go live to the moment that I recorded when it happened, and then I'll do coverage. All right, we're 1 minute from totality, 7:46. I'm just clearing the power lines, and I do in fact see a little bit of light in the lower right limb. There it is, totality right now. I'm going to crank down the ISO. I don't know, man. So that was totality, resetting the Nikon. The Nikon still shows light. Okay, so here is the Nikon footage, and as you can see, the bottom of the moon never darked out as much as the top of the moon. It was very low on the horizon. We'd had chemtrailing earlier in the day, so it was tough to see at totality without use of the full spectrum camera. Here I've manipulated a bit, and while there is no obvious evident lit lip, it is clear that the bottom limb is not as darked out as the top. So you tell me, did we hit totality? We know for a fact that totality was not achieved on the last one, even though it was predicted. So let's take a quick look at the full spectrum camera so that everyone understands why this footage looks the way it does. What you see here is the camera adjusted so that I can just see the moon lighting back up after totality. But what the full spectrum camera can do is this. I can adjust it so that I can see every inch of the moon at any given moment. And this is how I shot the entire eclipse. And this may not seem like such a big deal, but when the two unknown objects transited the moon, had I not been able to do this, we wouldn't have been able to see it at all. And I'll run the visual spectrum when I get there. Those UFOs are coming up later in the clip. But this is just to kind of let people understand why the footage looks the way it does. I can run it like this, where the blacked out portion of the moon is black, or I can adjust so that I can see every detail, even in the blacked out portion of the moon. And this is also critical because it allows me to film occulting or de-occulting stars. And we're going to start, or I'm going to run one that actually I had no idea this was going to happen. A star unocculted, or came from behind the moon. A light came from behind the moon as I was filming, and when we get to that footage, I'll tell you why it's important. You can see the chem debris in that shot. So here comes a star or a light unocculting. It's going to happen on the right, and first I'll show you the unmanipulated footage as it happens, and then I'll zoom in on it. The reason this is important is because some people reported seeing stars through the disk during the eclipse. Now, I think this is either, I looked it up, it's either a 5 or a 7, I think it's a 5 magnitude star, don't call me on it. This one may have been bright enough to prove that sometimes the lunar disk is see-through. If you know anybody who shot a light showing through the darkened portion of the moon, because we're looking with the full spectrum here, so the whole top of the moon would have been blacked out to a normal camera, I'd like to know about it. Here it is zoomed in, and we will watch the star come from behind, this light blinking back in. And again, I have had reports, and I did get some footage handed to me, some stills. The problem is the quality is so low that I'm not sure we can make a case with that footage. So if anyone else thinks they saw a light shining through the disk, you can see where it's positioned. You can use Stellarium to look up the star from the night of the eclipse. That would be a big deal. Because I'm still trying to prove that the lunar disk is see-through at times. Next up, I saw I managed to catch two stars or two lights that were occulted, but During the eclipse, they did not blink out in the same way as the previous ones I have just showed, where they blink out all at once. For a while there, we were thinking it was going to go into the disk a ways before it blinked out, but it's clearly dimming a little bit, going quite a ways in to the edge of the blacked out moon. This should be the blacked out portion of the moon to a regular camera, and then it goes out kind of all at once. There it goes. And we're going to take another view of this closer up. Okay, here it is zoomed in, and you'll see the other ones that I've just shown when the moon was not eclipsing excuse me, shows these stars just hitting the edge and going out all at once. That's not what we see here. It looks like it travels further in, it looks like it dims a bit, and then it goes out all at once. And here it comes. See, it's quite a ways in there. And there it goes. And now we're going to look at the second star that was occulted, or the second light that was occulted. You can see it there on the left limb of the moon. If you look at the bottom of the moon here, you can see that that's kind of the lit portion that your eye would be seeing, maybe a little bit of color. And again, you know, the same thing as with every eclipse. You can see color if you take a camera with a very quick exposure. If you run video, it's almost impossible to get color. If you put a telescope as your lens, it's impossible to get color. Using the full spectrum like this, of course, you're always going to get these kind of rose-colored hues. Here's the same star or light, again zoomed in. And again, it looks a little bit different than when the moon was not in this kind of eclipsing event. Looks like it goes much further in. It looks like it dims slightly and then blinks out. Look how far in that went. And then there it goes. Crazy. Alright, moving on. I've shown this a number of times before, but it's interesting that this happened on the night of the eclipse. Whenever you see the circle, look in and you will see a blinking light that I pick up. I've filmed this a number of times, and I'm not sure what's going on here. Each time I've filmed it, it's been with the full spectrum camera. Even though I had the telephoto on it, I cannot detect this, but to be fair, the telephoto is not zoomed in as much. Now I'm going to zoom in on this one. You can tell it's got the hue, the kind of full spectrum hue on that dot. The first one was completely white, which is weird. And there it is again. We're going to zoom in. I did 4 of these things. This one is very white, almost a tinge of blue, but the last one, see that? When I brightened it up a bit, look at that kind of bluish undertone with a rose overtone on top. Don't know what these things are, but I've filmed them before quite a few times. This will be the last one. Look for the circle. Lower right. That one's a little more difficult to see. We'll zoom in on it. And look at that. So I mean, these are clearly not hot pixels on the camera. I filmed them so many times. The first couple times I saw it, I thought maybe they were hot pixels, but that does not seem to be the case here. These are not hot pixels. All right, here comes the unknown objects. They'll be coming in from the right. I had a double transit, and I have the visual spectrum running in the upper left of this frame, so you can see that without the full spectrum camera, I never would have been able to see these objects. Here comes the first one. They come in from the same side. Now this is typical of the objects that we film transiting the moon. It's one of these little black round things that takes quite a while to get across. But look at this second one. It's a bit elongated, and actually Croette was standing there and she commented that it looked like an edge-on boomerang. I kept waiting to see if it was going to turn, but this is a pretty interesting double transit for a number of reasons, to include people from other parts of the country, including Richard 205 Maria, have shown that they filmed black objects that look like this transiting the moon, and he's like over 2,000 miles away from me, maybe closer to 3,000 miles. We're going to take another look here. I'm going to zoom in a bit and try to keep them both in frame. Here they come at the right, and again, had I not had access to a full spectrum camera, we never would have saw this. This would have been occurring in the blacked out portion of the moon to our eyes and to regular cameras. And here comes the first object. It's got the typical round kind of black look that we have filmed so many times. I have so many of these objects posted here. And here comes the second one. Now that's the interesting one. I don't believe I've ever posted anything that looks kind of elongated in that way, unless we are looking at something like the boomerang just edge on. Hard to know. Very cool to have had this ability with the full spectrum camera though. Almost everything I'm showing you tonight about the eclipse is solely due to my ability to film in full spectrum. Alright, now we're going to zoom in on the most interesting, the second of those two objects, the kind of elongated one. Okay, there's the first one going by, and I'm going to go over and zoom in on the other one. So yeah, it's just a very interesting object, and they're both in very straight trajectories, although I need to measure them. I'm trying to get this edit done, so I didn't take the time to do, a very careful measurement. Part of the problem is I pan the camera twice, and when you're trying to prove a straight trajectory, it makes it very difficult when the camera has moved. Whatever that was, this is the first time we've filmed a transit with two things in line like that. So here comes the visual spectrum camera, what our eyes see after totality, and I'm going to run this at 4,000% speed and talk for a minute. So while I was busy the night of the eclipse getting all this footage, people were reporting to me that no good live feeds of the eclipse were being shown anywhere, and some were even telling me that places that were running the live feed, the video quality was so terrible as to be insulting. And so, knowing for a fact that the last eclipse we were told was total, when in fact it was not, knowing now that while this might be called a total eclipse, it did not darken all the way evenly across. The bottom part of the moon was always brighter. I think it's pretty fair to say, and also it's been mentioned that all these new high-tech cameras on the supposed ISS, why the hell didn't they film an eclipse? It's just kind of ridiculous. There's almost no coverage of this eclipse. I think they got caught with their pants down last time. These eclipses are manipulated events, and there is no simpler prediction you can make in astronomy than whether an eclipse will be total or not, and they botched it on the last one. And that is a very telling thing. We'll close out with some footage here from the full spectrum camera, and I've got it locked down so that you can tell it's kind of in an eclipse. Anyone who's interested in learning more about why I say these are manipulated events, go back to March of 2014 on this channel, and there's a clip posted that demonstrates the color problems, the timing problems, and other things. At any rate, there's my report for the eclipse, and I have no idea why the authorities in this country totally ignored an event that is supposedly this rare. Very telling indeed. There it is. Cheers.